As per usual, the format for this morning's press conference is as follows. The Premier will make a statement, then you, the members of the press corps, will be given the opportunity to ask questions. In asking the questions, we kindly ask that you identify yourself and the institution which you represent, because we may just have to give follow-up information in the future. You're kindly asked to turn off your telephones, or if the case may be, you may put it on vibrate. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, join me in welcoming to the podium the Honorable Premier of this fair island of ours, the Honorable Mark A.G. Brantley.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another of these press conferences. This is the second that we're having for this month. I think you'll recall we were here on the 1st of March, and that the 1st of March was intended to be the February press conference that we missed. So hopefully this will be treated as the press conference for the month of March. We did commit to do this every month, and we're trying to honor that commitment. I start where I usually do, by extending some congratulations. I want to congratulate Mrs. Pamela Martin on a promotion. I gather she's now the resort manager at Nevis Plantation Beach Club. And in her new role as manager, Mrs. Martin will continue to be responsible for the front office, reception, reservations, housekeeping, night management, the Palm Spa and Treasures Boutique. She will oversee the installation of a new property management system and will implement new standards of operating within the beach club. As we know, Nisbet is a very significant employer and a very significant hotel on the island, and we welcome the upward mobility of our own people. Let me also congratulate three divisions who were selected to the Leeward Islands women cricket team, which participated in the Women's Super 50 tournament in Guyana. Female cricketers, I'm told, are Miss Sanelda Willett, vice captain of that team, Roselle Liebert, and Melissa Clark. While we speak about cricket, let me also take the opportunity to congratulate Mr. Ricky Skerritt. He has been elected, as we know, the new president of Cricket West Indies. He, along with his vice president, Dr. Kishore Shallow, defeated incumbent Dave Cameron by a margin of 8-4. So a significant victory by Ricky Skerritt, and it marks the first time that a national of St. Kitts and Nevis would be lead in West Indies cricket. We know that he was hitherto the manager of the cricket team, and he has come back now to lead. And so we wish Mr. Skerritt all the very best, and we look forward certainly to Cricket West Indies doing great things under his leadership. Let me also congratulate, of course, our Special Olympians. We are aware that the Special Olympians would have traveled to the United Arab Emirates, where the Special Olympics were convened in Abu Dhabi, and they went there to participate in the World Games. The Nevis Island Administration and my office, the Premier's office, would like to go on record as congratulating our athletes. The St. Kitts Nevis team performed exceptionally well. All 5 athletes from Nevis returned with medals, 4 of them securing gold and the other securing silver. The Nevisian athletes are Lavanda Forbes. She got a gold medal in bocce doubles with Kristen Warner. If you don't know what bocce is, that's okay. I didn't know either. I had to go look it up. But Lavanda Forbes got a gold in bocce. Robert Liddy, he got a gold in cycling. Shakir Stapleton, gold in tennis. Jamal Merchant, gold in cycling. And Shane Nisbet got a silver medal in cycling. I think they deserve every commendation from us for a fantastic performance in Abu Dhabi. The Ministry of Sports assisted financially with their travel to Abu Dhabi, and the Minister of Sports, the Honorable Eric Evelyn, was on hand at Wally with a nice contingent of supporters to warmly welcome them home on Saturday evening. The Ministry of Sports has also organized a reception in honor of the athletes that will be done at the Cicely Brown Integrated School today from 1 o'clock after mini motorcade, which starts at 12 noon. So they've told me that I must finish my press conference early and in good time so that they could have the mini motorcade and, of course, thereafter the reception at the Cicely Brown Integrated School. This is being coordinated, I'm told, by the Ministries of Education and Youth and Sports, and we are exceedingly proud of our athletes, our Special Olympians, and again, we commend them, and the administration pledges to continue to do all that it can to support them. While I'm in congratulatory mode, let me also congratulate our debaters. It seems now a long time, but it actually would have happened since I was last here. And so, while we all would have of course congratulated them already, I think it's important from this official rostrum that I do so as well. Team Nevis would have participated in the 47th annual Leeward Islands debating competition, which was held in Antigua from Wednesday 27 February to Monday 4th March 2019. The following persons represented Nevis, the Nevis Literary Debating Society. They were Miss Azel Williams, Miss Delia Slack, Miss Cavincia Webb, Mr. Zidan Wilkin, Miss Delcia Burke, and Mr. Patrice Nisbet II. The staff sponsors were Mrs. Kwanda Glowden Jones, Mr. Troy Jeffers, and they were being assisted by Miss Curtis Clark and Mr. Kedgel Smith. And Mr. Kedgel, of course, being one of the top debaters, I believe, over the last few years. As defending champions, Nevis received a bye to the semi-final. Night 3, debate 4 on Saturday, 2nd March. The mood for that debate was, and I quote, "The lack of trust in our own people is the main reason why the majority of CARICOM states are yet to adopt the Caribbean Court of Justice as a final court of appeal." Mrs. Zidan Wilkin and Ms. Delia Slack represented our team, and they won against Team Anguilla. As winners of Night 3, Debate 4, Nevis competed in the finals against Antigua. I think that's important because this was in Antigua, and Nevis was in the finals against Antigua in Antigua. And that happened on Sunday, the 3rd of March, 2019. The mood for that debate was, and I quote, "Caribbean countries have not done enough to afford the LGBTQ, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community the same legal rights and protections as other citizens." Ms. Cavincia Webb and Mr. Azel Williams represented the team and won. Ms. Azel Williams was awarded the best speaker for this debate. Nevis won the 47th Leeward Islands debating competition against host country Antigua, making this their 3rd consecutive victory. They returned home on the 4th of March, 2019. On the return to Nevis as three-peat winning debating team, the Ministry of Education, led by the Honorable Troy Liebert, hosted the debating team for lunch at the Four Seasons Resort on March 8th. I'm told that the debaters, the other team members, had a grand time. They were there with Minister Liebert and Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Mr. Barrett, and I'm told they had a wonderful time. And again, I think demonstrative of this government's commitment to our people, that we are there with them in good times and in bad. And I believe that the debaters really deserve a resounding round of applause from us, because they would have done exceedingly well to have won 3 times in a row. And it's not easy. I was involved in debating a long time ago in my youth, and I know it's not easy. It's not easy to win at home. It's doubly difficult to win abroad. And they have now done it 3 times in a row. Of note is that I'm told all of these youngsters were debating for the first time at the Leeward Islands Debating Championship. And so it speaks volumes to the quality of youngsters that we have in our school system, that these could have debated for the first time and triumphed in the way that they did. And they used different debaters each night. So we had one team for the first night, a separate team for the second night, and it shows really the quality across the board. And I think that the teachers should be commended, the schools should be commended, and the debating society should definitely be commended for the work that they've done and continue to do. Quickly, as part of their Caribbean tour, from the 17th to 29th March, Nevis was pleased to welcome for a few hours the Prince, His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, and his wife, the Duchess of Cornwall. And they visited St. Kitts Nevis on Thursday, 21st March. I think Nevis acquitted itself well. We had a small open reception at the dock, and then a very brief reception at the house of the Deputy Governor General, and I was very pleased at the turnout and the way that Nevis and Nevisians came out and acquitted themselves. This was a return of Prince Charles after some 45 years, and I know many people have queried why it is that we continue to facilitate and receive the royals in the way. And we do so because they are royals and they're distinguished personnel. And when they come, just as we extend ourselves to all visitors, we extend ourselves to them as well. I can tell you that from a tourism perspective, the level of promotion and exposure that Nevis got was quite phenomenal. And I was able to see, in fact, I had people from the UK, Nevisians living in the UK, sending me video clips of news items there on the BBC and others of the visit and them being here. And I think it was excellent exposure for us. I thank the Prince of Wales, His Royal Highness, and of course his wife for coming. They spent some time there, and then whilst the Prince went back to St. Kitts, his wife went to the Hermitage, where she spent some time, I believe, with Madam Minister Hazel Brandy Williams and with some youngsters, and had a good time there as well. And so we're delighted that they've come, and we wish them continued success in their Caribbean tour. The Youth Parliament was held on the 11th of March 2019 to commemorate Commonwealth Day 2019. And just bear with me as I get some information here on that Youth Parliament. I've been given a brief on it. I think that the Youth Parliament went exceedingly well, and the youngsters, all part and parcel of our development of our youngsters. The theme was a connected Commonwealth. The year's theme, was a connected Commonwealth. The youth parliamentarians were engaged in a mock sitting of the Parliament at the Nevis Island Assembly Chambers. The mock sitting involved 31 youth parliamentarians between the ages of 14 to 16. They were selected from 3 secondary schools on the island, namely the Charleston Secondary, Gingerland Secondary, and of course Nevis International Secondary. The debate was centered on a white paper on the topic, Establishing Universal Health Care for the Island of Nevis. They all took part as members of government, opposition, president, clerk, sergeant-at-arms, and door guard during the sitting. The presiding officer, after invoking prayers, also read the Queen's Commonwealth Day message. Essentially, the youth took over our Parliament, and all the roles were replicated in the Parliament. Of note, I believe, on the government benches, Lauren Lawrence was the Premier, and indeed, she's a Premier in waiting, and she was acted as Premier. And Steve Walters Jr., she's of the CSS, Steve Walters Jr. of the GSS, he acted as the Deputy Premier. They had Destiny Lau, Kellyanne Descent, Cheyenne Tyson, Satari Orr, Lamira Pollard, Leandra Webb, Persha Woodley, Shaquana Williams, Tequan Morton, Jaden Dorr, and Sherinique Reed, all from different schools, the high schools on the island, but they were on the government side, good side to be on. And then on the opposition side, we had Patrice Nesbitt II, leader of the opposition, Charlene Myers, deputy leader of the opposition, Danella Thompson, Kaseya Manners, Tyrese Watts, Mia Alexander, Natrisa Smith, Hoshari Otley, Shoba Subramani, Leniqua Dyer, Jahida Farrell, Tevaria Richards, Shaquita Brown, and Shadiqua Stapleton. Those were on the opposition benches. And we had others in positions. Najade Liebert, she of the GSS was the president. Brianna Chapman of the CSS was a clerk. Alvana Brown was a sergeant-at-arms, and Lebron Sr. was the man guarding the door. The debate, I'm told, was very interesting, and the young persons acquitted themselves well. Yet another example, in my view, of our young people doing great things. And we commend them, and we continue to encourage them to continue to do great things. I, at this point, wanted to also announce that St. Kitts and Nevis, and more specifically the island of Nevis for our purposes, we were pleased that we were able to avoid getting listed, or blacklisted as it's referred to, on the European Union's list of non-cooperative jurisdictions on tax matters. The Nevisian public would recall that it was on Christmas Eve last year that we were forced to convene an urgent sitting of the Parliament. I'm sure even my colleagues were not happy with me that we had to go to Parliament on Christmas Eve when naturally people are minded to be out shopping with their families, etc. But we had to convene that because the EU had imposed on us a deadline of December 31st to make some changes. We went into the Parliament, and based on the advice that we had, we made some changes. I am very pleased, and I want to go on record to commend our legal advisor, Mrs. Helen Lewis and her team, to commend Miss Heidelin Sutton and her team for the really hard work that they did. And also, of course, the PS Finance who's here, Colin Dorr, and his team, because they worked collaboratively to come up with the solutions for us, and we were delighted that we were able to find a prescription that avoided us getting on this blacklist. I hasten to say, as I've said publicly, however, that I take no comfort in the fact that St. Kitts and Nevis avoided the listing, because other CARICOM countries were not so fortunate. Barbados, for example, made changes and they were nevertheless listed. Dominica was listed, Trinidad and Tobago was listed. I believe Belize was also listed. And we have gathered that some in the U.S. territories, Guam, and in our context, the United States Virgin Islands, were also listed. I continue, as Minister of Foreign Affairs, wearing a different hat, to encourage the EU to adopt principles which are inclusive and which allow a framework to which those affected can contribute. For us, that is of absolute critical importance. We cannot continue in a vein where we are getting diktats from Brussels for us to simply respond to. And so whilst we went into the Parliament on the 24th of December, Christmas Eve, you would have heard my remonstrations there. And sometimes you have to swallow medicine that you don't like. It's bitter. But you do so because there is a greater good that we're seeking to serve. I would just like to reiterate for the record that St. Kitts and Nevis has now twice in the last 4 years, 2014 and again in 2018, had peer reviews by the OECD. And on both occasions, we got a grade of largely compliant, the same grade that the United States of America, for example, has. And it says to me that we're really doing the right thing. What the EU, however, is doing is what they call OECD plus. They are creating for themselves rules of their own creation, adding to the rules that the international community has set. And so we continue to engage in dialogue, but at the same time we continue to protest the approach. And just yesterday, I had occasion to meet with a special envoy from Ireland who came to discuss certain bilateral issues, and I was able to raise most strongly with her our objection to the approach that is being taken at the level of the EU. And so we continue to ask, and this is a matter which I think we ought not to tire of talking about. Why? Barbados, for example, the EU initially said that we taxed some entities and didn't tax others. And so we created an unlevel playing field. Barbados, for example, made changes and decided to tax everybody at 5%. The EU then comes back and says that's too low. And so you're still going to get blacklisted. Now that really trespasses on a country's sovereignty, a country's ability to set their fiscal policy. And as I said to my dear friend, the ambassador from Ireland yesterday, I said, can I in Nevis and St. Kitts say to France that your rates at 40 and 50% are too high? That you're killing your people with tax? Clearly we would be out of place. That's a matter for France and the French government and the French people. Can we say to the UK that your rate of 40% is too high? Clearly not. So similarly, how do they then arrogate unto themselves the power to say to us that our rates are too low? And it might have been interesting, I suppose, that I was talking to Ireland yesterday. Because Ireland has some of the lowest tax rates in the world. They have a corporate tax rate of only 12.5%. So Ireland's rate, corporate tax, is actually lower than St. Kitts and Nevis. Yet they are a member of the EU. They have not been blacklisted. There is no pressure on them. So it really begs the question as to what is the real objective. And I continue to speak about this because I think it is important that we sensitize the public and we sensitize each other and we continue to have the conversation in the region but also outside the region with the EU and others. Notwithstanding, I think it is a good thing for Nevis and for the financial services sector that we were not blacklisted, because that has with it certain very serious reputational risks. And we already have this phenomenon, as you know, of de-risking, where banks, correspondent banks, are delinking themselves from us and saying that we are high-risk jurisdictions. And these things certainly don't help. So I'm delighted that we've been able to avoid that particular occurrence, and I hope that our Caribbean neighbors who have been affected will soon overcome the difficulty. Before I go on, though, let me just, since I'm on my soapbox, Dominica, for example, having been blacklisted, it shows to my mind the insensitivity of the EU. Dominica was destroyed in 2017. Hurricane Maria wiped out that country. Over 200% of GDP was lost in less than 24 hours. Bridges gone, roads gone, homes gone, crops gone. Dominica then suffered as a direct consequence the loss of Ross University, which decided they would relocate out of Dominica because infrastructure has been destroyed. Yet, Dominica was blacklisted. It's almost as if to say, I don't care what happened with you. I don't care what you're going through. No. Dominica could hardly be focused on tax and issues that are important to the EU when it has people who don't have a place to live. It has hospitals blown down, clinics destroyed, schools destroyed. And that to me demonstrates more than anything the insensitivity of those in Brussels who continue to make rules that they say the rest of us must follow. Let me now move quickly. I want to extend some condolences. We have had the information that on the 4th of March 2019, Justice Albert Redhead passed away in Antigua and Barbuda at the age of 77. An official funeral service should have been held for him yesterday in Antigua, and we are told that the burial will be today. And so, as we are here, that is happening in Antigua. Justice Redhead was born in Grenada, but he worked in many of the Commonwealth countries of the Caribbean after receiving a Bachelor of Laws degree from the University of London in 1971. In 1972, he was called to the Bar of England and Wales by the Middle Temple. In 1974, he moved to St. Kitts and Nevis, where he began work as a Crown Counsel. In 1975, he became Registrar of the St. Kitts and Nevis Courts, and he also served as a magistrate of the courts. In 1980, he became the Director of Public Prosecutions in St. Kitts and Nevis. In 1985, the Judicial and Legal Services Commission of the Caribbean Community appointed Redhead to be High Court Judge of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. In 1997, he became an appeals judge of the same court. And even since retiring from the court in 2003, he has twice been reappointed as an acting High Court Judge of the court from 2004 to 2006 and again in 2007. I think we are all very familiar with Justice Redhead. He's survived by his wife June, his children, and grandchildren. I mention him because he has served with distinction not only St. Kitts and Nevis, but the region. And certainly his loss is a loss to the legal fraternity, but a loss to us all. In that vein of condolences, today also marks the second anniversary of the passing of my former permanent secretary, Carl Williams, and the husband of our dear colleague, Madam Minister Hazel Brandy Williams. She's not with us today, and we understand why she could not be with us, and our prayers are with her. And we certainly continue to be with her and to provide whatever comfort and support we can. And to the family, we continue to extend our condolences and to pray that his soul continue to rest in eternal peace. Quickly, some other matters. The Department of Youth, in collaboration with the Department of Education, successfully hosted the Bank of Nevis Inter-High School Athletics Championship on March 16th and 17th at the Nevis Athletics Stadium after an impressive opening ceremony on March 15th. We are very grateful for the sponsorship of $20,000 from the Bank of Nevis. The meet was of a very high standard and was well supported by members of the public. The Charleston Secondary School placed first, followed by the Ginger and Secondary School and the Nevis International Secondary School. Congratulations are in order to the Department of Youth and the collaborating departments and ministries for a very successful event. Ministers Evelyn and Liebert, congratulations, and I like the way that we are working together to make things happen on the island of Nevis. Nevis has joined in the observance of World Social Work Day on March 19th. That was commemorated through a lively and much praised panel discussion and male volunteer drive by the Social Services Department. The roundtable discussion on the topic increasing male participation in social work was hosted on Friday, March 15th and was featured on NTV. Internationally, data shows that only 14% of child protection workers are men, yet more than half of the children involved in child protection plans are boys. For the Federation, the figure shows 83 females to 10 males involved in this area. And so this is a clarion call for more males to get involved in this area, not only in the context of jobs, but also, of course, to provide support. I want to take the time as well to congratulate the Guyanese community on Nevis for successfully hosting its annual Masharama celebrations. I do not believe it's Masharama, you know. Masharama, I think, is a pun on Culturama. I think it's Mashramani, but they have called it Masharama in order to equate it to Culturama. So I hope I'm right. I don't mean any offense to the Guyanese community. But they had a massive celebration at ETW Park on the 2nd of March. The event featured cricket and cultural presentations. The celebrations were well supported by members of the public. And I was there in my capacity as Premier Minister of Culture. The Honorable Eric Evelyn was there. And certainly the representative for Charleston, the Honorable Spencer Brand, was also there. So we came out in some numbers to show our support to the Guyanese community. I want to take a moment, though, to continue to appeal to our people. We were all, I think, privy to something that surfaced on social media where an unfortunate comment was made, which was deemed to have been highly discriminatory against Guyanese and against non-nationals generally. I continue to remind Nevisians that more Nevisians live outside Nevis than live inside Nevis. Let me say that again. More Nevisians live outside Nevis than live inside Nevis. It means that wherever we go, we encounter our people. They're in St. Martin, they're in the BVI, they're in the USVI. They're in the United States of America, they're in the United Kingdom. You go to some places like Leeds, in England, Chapeltown, you want to know if you're back in Nevis. You go to St. John's in the USVI, you want to know not only are you back in Nevis, but are you in Brownhill, for the numbers that have settled there. I say that to say to all of us, let us be welcoming to those who have come to make a contribution to our island. We have gone and we have contributed to the development of other countries. So too now, others have come to Nevis to contribute to our development. There is no room in Nevis for people to attack or seek to discriminate against those who would have come. And if you're ever tempted to do it, I ask you to ask yourself, how would you feel if your brother and sister, your child, aunt or uncle, your mother or grandmother, who's living in the Bronx or living in Brooklyn, would be so attacked? We have all gone abroad, and I speak about it passionately because my father, blessed memory, left here in 1955, if I recall the history he taught me, and moved to the United Kingdom. He left there in 1968 and moved to America. And as a young boy in Handys Road, I well remember that little check that came every month like clockwork to ensure that our little family here got something to eat. This is an experience that Nevisians have lived. And it therefore bothers me when Nevisians will turn around and attack other people for coming to Nevis. I see in the audience here police, so many men and women serving in uniform here in Nevis, keeping you and I safe, are not from here. They come from St. Vincent, they come from Dominica, they come from Jamaica, they come from other places. And we must learn to accept diversity and accept the fact that we now live in an interconnected world. And we should never forget the days when things were hard in Nevis and the barrels used to come from our families in St. Martin and St. Thomas and St. Croix to keep us in bread, to keep us fed and clothed. So let us be welcoming to people. And I want to be no doubt in anybody's mind that this government disassociates itself from any attack on non-nationals. People who wish to come and who want to contribute are welcomed. And we welcome them consistent with our moral obligation, but also consistent with our obligations to CARICOM, our obligations to the OECS. And let it be forever so, that we continue to be a welcoming community to those who seek to move here, to live here, and to contribute here. Let me, ladies and gentlemen, move on. I have some additional information. I want to update on the integrity, forgive me, before I get there, let me, from the Ministry of Education, the Ministry and Department of Education, in collaboration with the Ministry and Department of Sports, will be staging, how can I forget? We'll be staging the 27th Gulf Insurance Primary School Championship, also known as the Mini Olympics. This will be held at the new track facility at Long Point on April 3rd, starting at 12 noon with a short ceremony. And I emphasize short. Very short ceremony, because not one soul coming there for any ceremony. People coming to see the athletes. So the ceremony I've asked to be exceedingly short. This year's patrons are Letitia Clark and Alan Ward, both of whom attended the Violet O. Jeffers Nichols VOJ Primary School. Tickets, I'm told, should go on sale shortly. Primary school and secondary school children will purchase tickets for $5 before April 1st, or $10 will be charged at the gate on the day of the event. Adults, you'll be asked to pay $15 for the event. Now, I want to be clear, because this is a matter of controversy each year. We have consulted with the police, we have consulted widely, and we continue to say that this is a child-friendly event. Therefore, the Ministry and Department of Education will enforce its no alcohol policy. That is, absolutely no alcohol will be sold inside the venue, nor will patrons be allowed to bring alcohol into the venue from outside. So, I know some might see it as a matter for controversy. I hope there's no controversy. It's a child-friendly event, and I want people to understand that it's the primary schools, it's young children, and we want to create a child-friendly environment. It is a matter that has excited a lot of discussion, because we also appreciate that vendors want to make a dollar. It's a big event. But we're saying to our vendors that let us recognize the nature of the event. And I believe that this is fully supported by our security forces, and we are asking the vendors, therefore, to understand that there will be no alcohol permitted inside the venue. And for those vendors who set up wherever they set up outside the venue, we are saying to patrons, do not go outside and buy rum and beer and Guinness and think you're going to bring it into the venue with you, because there will be zero tolerance for that as well. So I hope I'm clear on that, and we are doing this not to deny anybody an opportunity to make a dollar, but because it's a child-friendly event, and notwithstanding the excitement, let us still remember that this is for children. So, we are not sure who will emerge victorious this time. There'll be a lot of debate. I'm hearing people whispering CPS. I don't know. I mean, I like Brownhill, and I'm sure Minister Jeffers likes Violet Jeffers, and Minister Evelyn is here, and he, I believe, likes Elizabeth Pemberton. Mr. Liebert is here. He likes EPPS. He's just a stone's throw from him. I'm sure that the good people from St. Thomas's, I see Keith Scarborough is here. I don't know if he'll be rooting for the green team. They are going to be there as well. So we're going to have a ding-dong battle as usual. And so we invite one and all to come out for the inter-primary sports. I believe that it will be the usual half holiday. We have to send the necessary instructions in relation to that. And we are inviting especially our friends and family in St. Kitts who come over. Matter of fact, we see vendors now coming from St. Kitts, and everybody is welcome. Come and be a part of really what is the largest sporting event, local sporting event in the Federation. So we invite one and all to come. And just again to remind you of the date, it's the 3rd of April, starting at 12 noon at the Munda facility. So we welcome all, and we thank again the Ministry of Education for putting this together each year, and the Ministry of Youth and Sports for what involvement they might have. And we look forward to this wonderful event at a wonderful facility that we have created there for our youth and indeed for all of our people. Integrity in public life, that clearly has been a matter that has been topical. I just want to give a quick update to indicate that we presently have secured office space at the Rams complex. We are now installing the furniture at that office space. We have installed telephone lines and internet. Those have been connected. The commissioners, we are told, have to date interviewed some 7 persons for various positions there, and we expect that they will be staffed very shortly. I had occasion to speak this morning to the chairman of the Integrity in Public Life Commission, and he has indicated that they're ready to move very quickly. And so I wanted to give that brief update because I think that this is a commitment that we have made. It's a commitment that I and this government are very serious about, and it's a commitment that we will bring to fruition as one of our pillars of greater transparency in government and more open and transparent governance. We have talked about a good governance agenda. This is an important pillar of that. And we have asked the legal department to expedite the regulations so that we can have all that we need. But we would expect a fully functional integrity in public life bill and commission and all the necessary support for that within, I'm advised, another month or month and a half. Everything should be up and running. And so we are very grateful to that, and we will look forward for that, and we look forward to executing as quickly as possible. Ministry of Tourism, some brief updates. Very important, the Pinnis Park project. You've heard me talk a lot about that over the years. In fact, I think sometimes when the politicians talk, people despair that these things are actually ever going to happen. We've had some setbacks. We've made it clear what those setbacks have been. But we are very pleased now that through a partnership with the Republic of China and Taiwan, that the designs for the Pinnis Recreational Park are being finalized. We have a consultant, Mr. Vincent Lai, who's been assigned to us full-time by Taiwan. The park will boast a variety of facilities, including a welcome visitor center, parking spaces, a recreational area for children and teens, as well as an amphitheater for concerts and similar events. The center of the park will remain open so that large events such as Culturama Fair can continue to be hosted at this venue. A public consultation on the Pinnis Recreational Park will be held on Tuesday, the 2nd of April, during which details of the plans for the development of the park will be shared with the general public and feedback would be invited. The Nevis Island Administration looks forward to the implementation of this project, as the park will be a tangible representation of 35 years of friendship between the peoples of Nevis and the Republic of China and Taiwan. I can't thank the Republic of China and Taiwan enough. Ambassador Lee has been a real friend in the short time he's been here to the island of Nevis. He has assisted us in so many ways. In agriculture, he's now assisting us with this park. In health, we've had tremendous tangible assistance from the Republic of China and Taiwan. And this is another example. Once the details of that consultation are made available by the Ministry of Tourism, we're asking one and all to go out to see the plans. We've had to do a redesign from what we had before, and of course to give their input before we finalize. And we hope, therefore, once those are finalized, to move to the start of construction this year. In the summer, we hope to kick off the construction of that long-awaited park. Exposition Nevis 2019, one of the big annual events from the Ministry of Tourism. They will host it, the annual month of activities, dubbed Exposition Nevis, under the theme, Celebrating Nevis's Tourism Through Festivals. This theme is in keeping with the designation by the Caribbean Tourism Organization, or CTO, of 2019 as the Year of Festivals in the Caribbean. Exposition Nevis will officially open on Sunday the 14th of April with a church service at the Crossroads Community Church and will culminate on Saturday the 25th of May with the annual Tourism Awards, which this year will take the form of a cocktail reception. That's very important because at that awards we recognize stakeholders in the industry who have done well. The ministry will continue to partner with several community-based groups to include events such as the Jessup Seafood Fiesta, Indian Castle Fisher Folk Fishing Tournament, SJCIC Good Friday Kite Flying Competition, and the New Rivers Farmers Association Open Day. Students will be actively involved in Hospitality Immersion, which is an interactive engagement with tourism professionals at two of our premier hotels in Nevis, as well as village tours and hikes. The calendar of events will be available very shortly on the Ministry of Tourism's Facebook page. I take the opportunity now to advise that Mr. Nelson Stapleton, well known to all of us, who for many years was our supervisor of the Beach Patrol Unit for the Ministry of Tourism, he has demitted office after 13 years of service. We go on record to place our thanks on record to Mr. Stapleton for his contribution and his many years of service, and we wish him the best in his future endeavors. We are inviting applicants with suitable supervisory, marine, and security experience to apply to fill the vacant post of Supervisor Beach Patrol Unit and to contact the Ministry of Tourism on 469-0051 for further details. Okay, I will move quickly. The Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation. They are in the process of acquiring 3 acres of land located in Hamilton Estate for the purpose of developing a housing development. We have had, as you know, quite a bit of demand from the St. Paul's area for housing. And I want to commend Minister Brand because he harassed everyone before he was in government. And when he got into government, he continued to harass everyone. I'm hopefully stop harassing people now because the government has agreed to the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation to purchase these lands and to develop these 3 acres of land. It should be Hamilton Estate, Lower Hamilton or Upper Hamilton? What do that? Middle Hamilton. Middle Hamilton. And we're hopeful that people who are interested in having a home in St. Paul's will avail themselves of the opportunity. I want to also commend the Deputy Premier, Minister Jeffers. He has really taken to land and housing in a very serious way. And I think one only need to look at the development there at Cedar View in Maddens to see the quality of what land and housing has been able to produce. A whole new community, thriving, beautiful, and that is what we are seeking to do. And so I commend him as well and continue to encourage them both to continue this effort to provide housing to the people of Nevis. The NHLDC is currently installing the infrastructure at University Heights. I can't emphasize that enough because it is a project the likes of which we have never seen, whether in Nevis or the region, where we have decided as a campaign commitment to execute on that by offering university graduates who qualify land at $1 EC per square foot and allowing them therefore to own a piece of the rock. And we are putting in the infrastructure, and those lucky persons who qualify would be able to get a home at University Heights. Remind me where University Heights is going to be, Minister Jeffers?
Well, we call it Lower Spring Hill Gardens.
Lower Spring Hill Gardens. So you're high up at Lower Spring Hill Gardens. And so University Heights is going to accommodate, I think I'm told about 18, just about 18 homes. And so we encourage university graduates who qualify to go and apply for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Land at $1 EC per square foot. That alone, if members of the press, should warrant a headline. $1 EC per square foot, showing our young people again that we're investing in them and encouraging them in the little ways that we can to come and contribute to the development of their island. They're accepting applications, and so we invite you to apply. The NHLDC also continues to clear the lands at Cedar View Housing Development, Phase 2. The minister wasn't happy he only did the first phase, so you're going to add a second phase now. At Madden's, 24 lots will be made available for additional housing over there. NHLSC is also currently installing roads at Paradise Cove Housing Development located in Jessops. So the good people of Jessops, we haven't forgotten you. Roads are being installed there, and certainly the intention is to improve the communities and improve the neighborhoods. And you will see that we're doing this in every single neighborhood. Under this government, no neighborhood is going to be left behind. Some may complain that it's taken a while to get to them, and I want to apologize. But certainly, with the limits that we work with in terms of resources, money, manpower, we can't do everything at once. But certainly, I am making a commitment that we will get to you. No neighborhood will be left behind. No community will be left behind. And I emphasize Jessops, it's important, because the people of Jessops have not always been kind to my party. But they will not be left behind. Tut Mun Sam and Bagay in this country must play a part and must be included. And that, I think, is an important position that this government has taken and will continue to take. Let me just quickly now move to water. We continue, as you know, to experience dry conditions. We continue to appeal to members of the public to exercise the necessary water conservation techniques, to use less water as much as possible, not to water the lawns and to waste water, but rather to conserve. And the Water Department is trying to manage the situation and will from time to time send out the appropriate notices. In terms of infrastructure, they're still very focused on completing the pipeline section of the CDB water project in the north of the island. These sections are Upper Jones Estate. They have already installed 3,700 feet of the estimated 6,000 feet of pipelines. And Westbury to Jessops, where they're installing the final 7,000 feet of 8-inch high-pressure pipe in parallel with 6-inch mains. The completion of these two projects are of significant importance as it relates to energy conservation. The Nevis Water Department will be able to gravity feed a small demand area in Upper Jones Estate and to the Upper Jessops tank without the need for third-stage pumping, thereby reducing the energy costs. That's clearly very important, and I commend them for that type of initiative. In addition, the good people of Craddock Road, your project continues. An estimated length of 5,300 4-inch PVC pipes are scheduled to be installed for that project. It is noted that this section has been constructed with 3-inch cast iron mains, and that is now being upgraded to 4-inch PVC mains. 1,200 feet of the 4-inch mains have been pressurized, and thus far they've installed 2,600 feet of pipes. We are also, and this for me is also very newsworthy, members of the press, I'm looking for a couple of headlines. This is one. We are trying to add more water to the system. And at Hamilton, we are constructing a water treatment facility to reduce the iron and manganese to an acceptable limit set by the World Health Organization standards from a large yielding well at Hamilton, which has the potential capacity to add at least 200 plus imperial gallons per minute into the water system. The plant will allow us to meet the Charlestown proper water demand and other surrounding areas. The water treatment plant will be funded largely by grant funding from the CARICOM Development Fund, CDF, with counterpart funding from the Nevis Island Administration. It is a plan of the Ministry of Water Services to install a 400,000 gallons water storage tank at Hamilton in the near future, funding permitting. The Ministry of Water Services has established a tender evaluation committee that is currently reviewing the bids from 4 companies to supply and install the water filtration equipment and a decision as to the successful bidder. The total grant funding available for this treatment plant from CDF is US $325,000. It is important to note that part of the package of the grant funding from CDF is approval to purchase 135,000 linear feet of drip irrigation equipment for the Department of Agriculture from available funds. That, we're told, will cost $33,792 US. So, very important, as we try to increase the water supply, we have a well in Hamilton that is a large yielding well. but the water is unfit for human consumption because it has high contents, we're told, of manganese and iron. And so we approach this fund, the CDF, to fund a system, a filtration system, that will allow us to clean that water, get out of that water the iron and the manganese. And just so members of the public are not alarmed, this happens all the time. We get water with various chemical components, and that water is treated to make it potable, to make it usable for us human beings. And that, if you can bring that well into the system, that will alleviate the problem tremendously in terms of water and water availability. So we continue to work on that. We have not given up on our well drilling program. That is a program that we started. I believe some wells were started at New River, if memory serves, and we continue to work on that as well. The government had committed, I believe it was some 10 million EC dollars, to seek to get that sorted. So we continue in that regard as well. But here we have an existing well that we are now trying to treat the water to ensure that that water can be put into the system, and that we do it in a way that people are safe and can use that water without any disadvantageous effects to our health. So we're working on that, and we hope to get that on stream. I think the Cabinet has been very clear to Mr. Brand that this is a priority above all other priorities, that we get this done. The Interpretation Center. The NIA, through the Ministry of Communication Works, are receiving some grant funding from the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, for the construction of an interpretation center at Hard Times, Gingerland, next to the Hard Times Community Center, which is now housing the Gingerland Health Center. I believe, Minister Evelyn, you'll be happy to hear that something is coming to Hard Times again. Under Sinkis and Nevis project to safeguard and protect our biodiversity. The project is titled Conserving Biodiversity and Reducing Habitat Degradation in Protected Areas and the Areas of Influence project. Under this project, the Nevis Peak and Camps River Gut will be designated as protected areas by the NIA. 2 park rangers have been employed to protect and collect information on the biodiversity in these and other environmentally sensitive areas. They will be housed at this facility to carry out their functions. The rangers have already received extensive training along with their counterparts on sink kits under this project, all funded by the UNDP with support from the federal government and the Nevis Island administration. There's a tendering process, because this government believes in giving everybody an opportunity. So there's a tendering process to select a contractor to close, and that is close to the end. And the winning contractor would be selected and informed shortly to construct this facility at Hard Times, Gingerland. The project also envisages the construction of a second facility in the north of the island in the Camps River area sometime in the future as funding permits. I like to add that part because clearly funding is a critical part of what we do. Let me now just run through very quickly the last elements of what I have to say before I open the floor for questions. Ministry of Health. Ministry of Health and Gender Affairs, they join the rest of the world in celebrating International Women's Day 2019 under the theme Think Equal, Build Smart, Innovate for Change, Empowering Women, Stimulating Change. 12 women under the age of 45 who own their own businesses were awarded at the Friday, March 8th ceremony. The ceremony was held on the lawns of Government House under the patronage of the Deputy Governor General, Her Honor Mrs. Hailita Liebert. We congratulate those young women on their achievement and their contributions to the development of our society. It was a wonderful event, and I believe it demonstrates the strength of our women, and particularly our young women, 12 of whom were awarded. And just so Madam Minister Hazel Brandy isn't here, but just so that she knows that I was accosted by some other young women who complained that they were not selected for the award. So I'm saying to her that clearly there are a lot more women out there who fall into that category, who themselves would like to benefit from such recognition. A brand new Philips Affinity ultrasound system was commissioned at the Alexandra Hospital on Thursday, the 14th of March. The Philips Affinity 50 ultrasound is a high-end advanced system capable of producing high-quality 3- and 4-dimensional imagery. The machine offers superb clinical versatility as its capabilities covers areas such as urology, obstetrics, gynecology, vascular, and cardiology imagery. Mr. Richard Suter, Philips technician, was on hand to commission the system and provide some hands-on training. That system at the radiology department cost us US $97,000. And that was an investment by the NIA in this new piece of equipment at the hospital. As part of World Kidney Day month of activities, the Ministry of Health and Gender Affairs has partnered with the Chronic Kidney Disease Department from Taiwan ICDF program to sensitize children on the importance of maintaining good kidney health. The My Healthy Kidneys program, which started on the 6th of March, consisted of one 40-minute session for grades 4, 5, and 6 at each of the island's primary schools, introducing children to the importance of good kidney health. The program will culminate with a jingle competition that will be open to all schools until 25th April 2019. Again, consistent with this government's push to educate our people about their health and encourage people to take responsibility for their health. Hypertension, high blood pressure, as we say, is one of the non-communicable diseases that is affecting many persons here in Nevis. Eating salty foods or foods with high sodium content increases blood pressure. If not controlled, can lead to kidney disease, heart disease, and stroke. The ministry has launched its salt awareness campaign this month, geared at encouraging the general public to reduce their salt intake. The campaign is further complemented by a video public service announcement featuring the Honorable Junior Minister of Health, Hazel Brandy, and the Honorable Eric Evelyn, reminding us that if we do use salt, remember to pinch, don't pour. This simple practice can save your kidneys. Pinch, don't pour. The ministry also recognizes the commitment of local businesses. Boddy's Restaurant, whose owner and chefs signed a contract to use less salt during food preparation. Let us all be reminded to make a concerted effort to reduce our salt intake. Pinch, don't pour. And I saw the video done by Minister Evelyn and Minister Brandy Williams. Very well done, I think, at Double Deuce Restaurant, where they were pinching and not pouring. One area where gender equality needs advancement is in the world of work. On March 20th, the Gender Affairs Department conducted a non-traditional occupation for women seminar. No. Women are underrepresented in areas such as construction, engineering, automotive technology, and politics. The seminar targeted young women and female students who were encouraged to think outside the stereotypical occupational norms and to explore the possibilities as it relates to choosing a career in a non-traditional occupation, which can be both exciting and rewarding. The demand for skilled labor is growing, and so we ask our women to challenge themselves and help fill the gaps that exist in our job market. The Ministry of Health and Gender Affairs will, very significant, they will be hosting the second biannual forum on the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals under the theme Prioritizing Investment in Health and Gender Mainstreaming in the OECS. The forum will be held at the Four Seasons Hotel from the 27th to the 29th March 2019. The forum is being made possible by the Nevis Island Administration and through some funding from UNFPA and PAL Americas, and aims to bring together ministers of health and gender affairs along with technical officers and members of civil society from a wide cross-section of the OECS. It is envisaged that the second biannual forum on the SDGs will forge new partnerships and develop innovative programs that will bring about the successful implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And so we commend Minister Brandy Williams and her team for the excellent work that they're doing, and we look forward to this very important international conference that starts in Nevis on the 27th. That's 2 days from now? Tomorrow, sorry, the 27th. Let me lastly now turn to disaster management. Last week, Monday, a team from the United States Southern Command, along with a representative from the United States Embassy in Barbados, visited the Nevis Disaster Management to do an assessment of the Emergency Operations Center, or EOC. There was a presentation where the identified contractor explained what would be installed in the facility. The value of the equipment is in excess of $150,000 US. And once that is installed, that equipment includes laptops, video wall, interactive whiteboard, furniture, and more. It is expected that our EOC will be comparable to anything anywhere else in the world. $150,000 investment. We welcome that, and we thank the United States government for their continued partnership. And then, last but not least, the Open Day, Agriculture Open Day. The Minister, Deputy Premier has promised that it will be the biggest Open Day that we've ever seen, and based on all that I've heard, it appears that it is shaping up that way. The 25th anniversary of the Agriculture Open Day takes place on this Thursday and Friday, 28th and 29th of March at the ETW Park. They've moved it to the ETW Park because, of course, they expect that the size, it will be so massive. It will be a major event. The theme is Think Climate Smart, Food and Nutrition Security and Sustainability for our 25th anniversary. It has been held under the patronage of Mr. Elmer Liebert, who was the first permanent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture. All are welcomed, and there should be lots in store from farmers, fishers, agro-processors, and support services for you to enjoy and learn from. That, ladies and gentlemen, brings me to the end of my opening remarks. I was a little longer than I had intended. Please forgive me. And if there are any questions, I will take those questions from members of the media now.
Good morning, Mr. Premier.
Good morning, good morning.
And good morning, members of government and the listening public. My name is Bjorn Hanley, and I'm here to ask some questions as it relates to matters of national interest in this country. So, Mr. Premier, question number one, water. Mr. Premier, there's a number of complaints out there in relation to water on the island of Nevis. Let's go back several years ago. I recall we had a company here on the island of Nevis called Bede, and they would have had press releases to say they found over 1 million gallons of water. They were up and down Nevis drilling for wells all over this island, and they found millions of gallons of water. And so water, we assumed the water problem was fixed. And fast forward to a couple of years now, last year, water increased by 30% because you claimed that the service, the delivery of service, has improved. So therefore you increased it by 30%. Now we seem like we're having some water issues again. So, and I'm hearing you talking about drilling of wells again. So it seems like we're going around in circles. So my question to you, Mr. Premier, is will you consider removing the 30% increase until the service increase? Question number one. And question number two, banking. Mr. Premier, at last press conference, you mentioned that a new bank will be here in Nevis, will be opening up in Nevis, and Nevis International Bank and Trust. So I did some research into that, and I took note that, Mr. Premier, you are the Minister of Finance, responsible for banking, and you would have issued the license to the bank that is coming. And the bank also has a website, so I did some research on that website. The website is ibanknevis.com, and there are a number of directors of the bank there. There are a number of directors, and we have directors. So I was looking for a local director, and there's one local director on the board of directors, and that is your loving wife, the beautiful Sharon Brantley. And so, Mr. Premier, my question, I understand your law firm also will represent that bank. So my question to you, Mr. Premier, is how do you regulate a bank considering all of the above? And Mr. Premier, you as the Premier of Nevis will appoint the regulator. So can you let us know who that regulator is, and how would you regulate a bank like that? And yeah, that's it for now. If you want to respond, then I could.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Hanley, for your questions. On the question of water, you can have a seat, Mr. Hanley. On the question of water, water, let us understand, it's not a static concept. It's not as if you say, in 2014, you have enough water. People continue to build, communities continue to grow. I just mentioned Cedar View. Cedar View doesn't exist 2 years ago. So as communities continue to grow, we appreciate that demands on the system for water and electricity are going to continue to grow. So we have to be ahead of the game, so to speak, in trying to ensure that we have the necessary supply, so that the fact that we would have drilled wells sometime in the past is not a complete answer to the ongoing demand for water and the need for us to continue to invest. So I want to make that very clear. Bede had said that they had found some million gallons. I think that the records would show we never got 1 million gallons of water from Bede. We got substantially less than that. But I'm not going to get into that debate. The bottom line is that water is essential, and any country, as it grows, will need more of it. And we have to look and see what we need to do. We have traditionally got water from underground aquifers. We are even now looking, there's one proposal from the United Arab Emirates, looking at a small desalination plant to generate some water. We have water in Hamilton that's available, but it needs treating, and so I spoke to that we are getting a water treatment system in place for that. And the intention really is to ensure that we have more water. Now, you mentioned the 30%. And I thought that I made it quite clear when we did what, in the circumstances, sounds like a lot, but really was a very nominal increase in the rates for water when viewed in absolute terms. And I recall, I have a bottle of water here. I recall using the example when I did the presentation then, that this, most of us would pay perhaps $5 for if we go out and we are at a function. And this contains, can't quite read it, but certainly 630 milliliters. That's what it says it contains. And we pay $5 for this. We were paying, how much for a total? $10 for 1,000 gallons of water. I want to put that in perspective. Householders pay $5 for 630 milliliters of water in the bottle. But we were paying 10 EC dollars for 1,000 gallons of water. So we said clearly that wasn't sustainable. We increased that by 30%, which means that you're now paying $13 for 1,000 gallons of water. So if you were to buy 3 bottles of this water, you pay $15. For 1,000 gallons of water, you're paying 13 EC dollars. So yes, the increase sounds like a lot, but in actual practical terms, it's not a lot. I go further and say what I said then, that we borrowed money from the CDB. Not this government, the previous government did. But government is government. And money that is borrowed has to be repaid. Part of the commitment that the government, when it borrowed that money, made was that it would increase water rates so that we would be able to repay the loan that the CDB granted to us. The then government delayed and delayed and delayed. It fell to us as a new government to do the necessary that had been committed to as part of the loan package from the CDB. So this really is nothing new. It is something that was agreed to, and it fell to us to implement it. 30% was designed to assist us to repay, I think there's $30 million or thereabouts, that we borrowed from the CDB for the massive water upgrade project that we've done. That water upgrade project, however, dealt with storage and distribution. It did not deal with more supply. So I want to be very clear on that. So a lot of the pipes and things, we were connecting the island in a better way. We were doing large storage tanks. If you go to the various areas, you'll see those large tanks up at the top of Rollins and places such as those. But the storage doesn't, of course, give you more supply. It just gives you better storage and better distribution. So what we're working on and what I'm speaking to now is the supply side. How do we increase the supply of water? Drought is something that we encounter from time to time, or let me call it the dry season. And in the dry season over the years, we've had difficulty. And we continue to encourage our people to be sensible in the use of water. Even when there's an abundance, we would encourage people to be sensible and not to waste water. And so this is a government, in my view, Mr. Hanley, that is being responsible in relation to water. And the 30% was not intended to cause hardship. The 30% was intended to assist us to pay the loan and to assist us in terms of the upgrades, which I think you have seen and everybody else has seen. Now I recognize that when you turn on your tap, you want water to come out. I recognize that. But we also hope that the public would recognize that there are certain circumstances well beyond our control, like dry weather. And if we don't get rains for a considerable period of time, we have to resort to rationing, and we have to resort to asking people to be more prudent in terms of their use of the critical water facility. So I hope that answers that question. Banking. You raise the issue of, I think what you're trying to get at is my wife is a director of the bank. You went around the chin-chin band, but I assume that's where you really want to get at. So let me be very clear. We have had offshore banking legislation in Nevis since on about 1996. In that period of time, we've been able to attract one single solitary bank, the Bank of Nevis International. This government in 2016, the CCM government, then led by the Honorable Vance Amory, went to the Parliament and we introduced new banking legislation to try and open up the sector. The Nevis International Bank and Trust is the first such bank that we've been able to attract. Now, my wife's involvement, I gather, has created some discussion, and we live in a democracy. Discussion is not only expected but welcomed. I want to make it very clear to you, Mr. Hanley, and to the members of the public, that these are my wife's clients. My wife is an independent businesswoman. She has been so for the last 13 years. Matter of fact, her business predates my entry into politics, and certainly predates my entry into government, because I only entered government in 2013 and became Premier, as you know, through the help of you and others in 2017. So the reality is that my wife's involvement in business happened long before politics, and I was involved in politics. And we must, I think, as a society, make up our minds what signal we want to send. Because my wife is not a politician. She's married to a politician. Should she then be asked to shut down her business and have no income and become a housewife? She has a first degree in management. She has an MBA. She's eminently qualified. And she owns her own business. So we have to be careful what message we're sending. As a consequence of her owning her own business, these people she has known for over 20 years. She was the one who negotiated and brought them to the island. And my understanding from her is that they asked her to act in an interim position as director to help them set up the operation. And that is exactly what she's doing. My understanding further, Mr. Hanley, to the extent that it matters, is that this interim position is soon to end, and that the people have already identified others who have banking experience and whom they would use as local directors for their bank. I hasten to say that this process with this bank took nigh 6 months. It started, I would think, in November, PS2, or thereabouts last year. And I believe that the license was only approved, not by me, I want to make that clear, because there's a process. There's a due diligence, there's a regulatory process. There's a regulator in place, Mr. Simpson, regulator of offshore banking, and they would have gone through an exhaustive background check and due diligence process. All that would have come to me, therefore, would be a recommendation from them. And that recommendation, I think, came in February, if memory serves. And so the process lasted about 6 months. I say one other thing in relation to this, that our society is, in terms of its size, a society where some of these things, I think, are almost inevitable, unless we're going to require everybody to shut down everything. I, for example, was a principal at a law firm, Brantley, before I even entered politics. That law firm is over 20 years old. And I'm still a baby in politics. I just come. So, again, we ask the question, what should happen? Should that be closed down and be people told you cannot engage in business? Or should they have other safeguards in place? So one of the things, for example, that we do is when anything that comes as discretionary comes to the cabinet and comes from Daniel Brantley, I recuse myself. That is pretty standard procedure for us in terms of insulating. And that would happen, I think, for anybody who had a life in business and at some point there may be an interaction with government. We're such a small community and a small society that there will be incidents of that. The question is, can you rely on the government to function in a way that is transparent and above board? And that is what we have sought to do. I will say also that when one looks at it, because I gather part of the argument that is in the public square is that somehow I'm the man who grants business licenses, grant licenses, whatever. If that is the case, Mr. Hanley, then I grant all licenses in Nevis as the Premier. Taking to its logical conclusion that every single business that operates on the island gets a business license through the Premier's ministry, through the Ministry of Finance, as the case may be. And it would mean, therefore, that a lot of businesses would have to close down because I know businesses are owned by family members, cousins, friends. I know businesses that have contributed to my campaign. So we sometimes, I think, have to take a view which is a little wider than the usual parochial politics. But to answer the question specifically, my wife's involvement is, I understand, a temporary involvement. It is shortly to be over. And her only involvement in this is because these are her clients. And beyond that, there is very little that I can add in relation to that. This wasn't a situation where people came to the government and the government said, oh, go and hire Mrs. Brantley, she will do something for you. To the contrary, she's the one who brought them because they're people that she's known for over 20 years. And I believe as a businesswoman, she's entitled to do that. So that is the best that I can do in terms of answering that, and I hope that that assuages any concerns that you might have.
Well, Mr. Premier,
if you have more questions, please.
Yes, you are. You mentioned a lot of things about your wife that I didn't say. Actually, I was just highlighting the facts that's out there, and you didn't answer the question that I asked. I asked you, how will you regulate a bank?
But I don't regulate banks, Mr. Hanley.
How will it be regulated?
I think that's why I'm trying to help you to understand the system. The banking system is regulated by an independent regulator.
Appointed by the Premier.
Yes, but the appointment doesn't interfere with the independence of the regulator. The functioning of the regulator is independent. The regulator doesn't take instructions from me.
And you're confirming that Daniel and Brantley is a law firm for this bank. Are you confirming that?
Well, as far as I know, Daniel Brantley, yes, they've done work for this law firm as they do work for, most people who come to the jurisdiction wants a law firm that is good.
And you're confirming that
they gravitate to the better law firms and those that can offer high quality service. So that is understandable that they will gravitate there.
You're confirming that your wife is a part of on the board of directors as well.
You said just a minute ago, I told you more than you needed. You're going to ask me the same question.
The website, I'm just telling you what I saw on the website.
But Mr. Hanley, that question has been asked and answered. You yourself said I gave you more than you needed. So you're going to ask me the same question again?
Okay. So you will appoint a regulator then to regulate that bank?
Mr. Hanley, there is an existing regulator, and Mr. Simpson.
Mr. Simpson
is the regulator.
Okay.
And Mr. Simpson is the regulator of offshore banking, who is an independent body that regulates offshore banks. Just as there's a regulator for financial services, Ms. Heidi Lynn Sutton, who's an independent body.
I'm just asking you, these are not coming from me. People are out there with concerns.
That is fine.
People are on the road.
We understand you bring people's concerns, but as I said, I've tried to take the time to answer you, and I hope that I've provided the answers.
I'm just asking these questions.
Okay.
So, and another question that's out there.
Yes.
On the road, Nevis. Can you confirm that you are the minister responsible for Nevlec?
Yes.
And you can confirm that Daniel and Brantley law firm is representing Nevlec?
Yes, that has been the case now for, I think, over 10 years, Mr. Jeffers? Yes, very long time.
Those are just some pointers that the people are out there.
Yes, well, the
speaking
the
about,
people
so-
can certainly ask, but Mr. Hanley,
And
the firm of Daniel Brantley has represented Nevlec long before I got
Yes.
into politics.
Yes.
And they continue, there was a hiatus, and then they continue to represent Nevlec. So again, if the question has a suggestion attached
Yes.
that I am somehow sending Nevlec's work to Daniel Brantley, that is not the case.
Just seeking some clarification.
Yes,
because
well, I hope the
people are out there.
clarification has been provided.
Yes, it has.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mayor Brantley, other government ministers, members of the press, the general public. Marvin Ross, One Radio. I have a few questions this morning, Premier Brantley.
Yes.
Firstly, over the past few months, we have heard and we have seen reports of teens going missing, runaway teens, some may call them. How is the government viewing these teens? Are they viewing these as troubled teens, or are they viewing this as trouble in the homes? Why these teens are, running away from home? Because at the end of the day, they do return. They end up in police custody. They return to home. And then some of these same teens, they end up running away again. How is the government looking at dealing with this issue? Because in the past we have seen teens go missing, and then at the end of the day we hear of sad news. We hear of deaths after these teens go missing. So how is the government looking at dealing with this? Because I see this as a problem in society, and that is my first question. Recently, we continue to hear of the government offering scholarships to individuals here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Does the government think that they are doing sufficient to make these offers acceptable, presentable, more appealing to the general public? And is the government satisfied that the response from individuals out there to gravitate to these offers? Thirdly, last week during an RSS panel discussion, some startling figures were revealed on crime and violence with regards to the last 20 years. Figures were that there were 360 murders, 90% were gang-related, and they were between the ages of 16 to 35 years of age. I know that the government has been doing their part, the government and the police force has been doing their part with relation to the crime and violence situation here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I know over the past few months the community has been doing their bit as well. But my question is it that we are doing enough? There has been some discussion that are we looking at the root of the problem? Because can we really deal with the problem here without getting at the root? Can we just deal with it at the surface of it? Does the government, does the police, do we here in the community think that we are at the root of the problem in order for us to deal with it? Because yes, we are doing something, but we still have these things happening in society, and of course we know we cannot get it dealt with overnight. And fourthly, we talk about drought. There are going to be water shortages, we understand that, and the Cultural 45 festivities are coming up, and we know that we've had wet fests and so forth. Based on these drought conditions, the summer is coming up. Does the Cultural Committee intend to have these wet fests, etc., knowing that, we are going to be in this drought period, knowing that we will have these water shortages and knowing that these wet fits may affect the situation here with regards to the water situation here on the island.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ross. Runaway teens. I first of all do not see this as a widespread problem. I see it as a problem to be sure, but certainly the reports that we've seen are sporadic and occasional. And I don't want the message to go out that somehow we have a widespread problem of runaway teens in St. Kitts and Nevis. It is a problem. We're not always certain why that problem occurs. Oftentimes it's a problem in the homes. It could be a mental health issue. It's very difficult to answer the question in terms of telling you why teens would run away. I think from time immemorial, teens have been rebellious and sometimes rebel against authority, rebel against their parents, and decide to run away. Lots of teens sometimes fall into situations where they have particularly female boyfriends, and they decide that they're better off going to relocate with that boyfriend and the like. So it is difficult to say what the triggers might be. I'm not aware that the authorities, the police, for example, have brought anything to the government. And I think that that's because of the sporadic nature of the activity that the police deal with it in the ordinary course. So, put differently, I don't think this is at a crisis level in terms of youngsters who might from time to time run away from home, as you put it. And I myself have not been advised that there's any particular alarm in law enforcement in relation to that. If people fall into that category, then clearly they are counseling and other services that are available to the family and to the teen that we would provide. In relation to scholarships, are we doing enough? Perhaps we're not, and we would invite you and members of the press to help us to do more. What I can say is that we have instituted a very rigorous program here in Nevis. The PS in Human Resources is here, he and his team, I think are doing an excellent job thus far in terms of creating awareness about various study opportunities that exist. There's a young lady there, Mrs. Gill, and she sends out almost on a weekly basis information as to study opportunities throughout the civil service and online, through social media and elsewhere. We are seeing advertisements. I think in the last few weeks, we would have seen some, I believe, from the OS. We would have seen invitations. The Taiwanese scholarships are open. As a matter of fact, we had the unprecedented experience recently where officials from HR would have gone with the Taiwanese to the schools to have a conversation with students about options that are available. So we are trying. We are certainly trying to create awareness. And as I said, maybe this is something the media can assist us with, because we do send out information. We are doing it in a more structured way. And we continue to invite young people who are interested in study to come to the Office of Human Resources here at the Social Security Building at Pinnis and to have a conversation with Mrs. Shanola Gill, who is the officer charged. So we actually have an officer who is dedicated to that and who is creating the awareness in the schools and elsewhere about scholarship opportunities. The uptake has not been as good as I would like. I complain about it all the time, but I think it's getting better. I believe last year, for example, we had 5 students from Nevis who were able to get scholarships to study in Taiwan. And that for me was a large number at one go. And it tells us that more and more our students are taking advantage of the opportunities. And you know where I stand on it, Mr. Ross. I continue to encourage our people because I know how difficult it must be for people to have to pay student loans. And if they can get the education for free, I urge them to take advantage of that opportunity. Whenever I talk to ambassadors and foreign ministers and representatives from other governments, I always talk about scholarships. I was in Romania recently, and we met with about 13 or 14 representatives of some of the top universities in Romania. I was surprised to learn that Romania has 92 universities. Some have campuses with over 20,000 students on campus. And they have been providing education for hundreds of years to to a lot of Europe and other countries in Africa and elsewhere. And so they're now offering, and last year they offered 45 scholarships to CARICOM. Youngsters from Antigua, St. Vincent, and Jamaica, I'm told, are already in school there. Of note is that these programs are fully funded. They provide you with airfare there and back. They provide you with room and board. They provide you with tuition, books, and the English is the language in which you're taught. So really and truly, what could be the hold-up or the hold-back from people taking the opportunity? I am tired of hearing families, many of which are poor families, meaning that they don't have the riches to send their students, their children to these universities. And to see them say, oh, I don't want that because that's too far. I don't want that because of some reason. And instead go and mortgage their home and whatever little and put themselves in considerable debt to do something which they could get for free. And this is not a knock on any of the other schools. Of course, UVI, in fact, UVI is now offering some scholarships as well, which I saw Mrs. Gill just advertised. Midwestern, I think it's called, in Texas, very popular. And we understand that. But we're also inviting our people to think outside the box. Because when you go to one of these countries, a Morocco, or Romania, a Taiwan, you acquire language skills, you acquire an appreciation of a different culture, and most importantly, you get an education for free. I said it the other day. When you come back to Nevis with your degree, and you get a job, and that job pays you $4,500 a month. Let's use a round figure, $5,000 a month. Your colleague who borrowed money from Development Bank, your neighbor, they come back the same time as you. They get a similar job, $5,000 a month. But here's the difference. Because you had a scholarship, your $5,000 is going into your pocket, your bank account. You're building something right away for the future. So you hear about University Heights, you can go and talk and say, listen, I want a home. Your colleague, who paid for theirs because they had to get a loan, half of that $5,000 is going to the Development Bank to repay their loan. So the person who gets a scholarship is in a much better position starting out in life when they come back than the person who has a loan to pay. So these are my some practical considerations that I think our people should bear in mind and should take account of as they move forward and as we offer these scholarships. But I want to commend HR, PS is here, and his team, because I think for a small team, they're really doing a lot to disseminate information. I myself am an avid social media user, and every time I get hold of a scholarship, I plaster it across my page, apply, apply, apply. People get fed up of seeing it, I'm sure. But that says that many of us are putting out this information, and it is really only for our young people to take advantage, and we continue to encourage them to do so. You talked about the shocking statistics, and I agree with you, the statistics are alarming. One murder is one too many. And 360 in the over 20-year period is clearly 360 too many. And when we think about the age group, we realize that these are people, the contribution from them, we have entirely lost as a country. And the young people are the people with the most energy, the most ideas. They're the people that we need to be paying Social Security. They're the people that the society depends on, because they're the ones coming to take the places as those of us, like myself and others, are headed to the exit. So, when young people are cut down in the prime of their lives, the entire country loses. The entire society, not just their families, but the entire country loses. So we lament that. And I think that I have been a very strong voice over the years about crime and violence, and have proposed solutions, or not solutions, but approaches that we could have taken. I think that we have had a bit of a lull recently. I want to commend the police for their ongoing activities. But the truth is that it cannot be only for the government and for the police. I say it all the time, Mr. Ross, because I think it is so. The police and the government are not the ones creating criminals. We're not the ones putting guns in the hands of youngsters and telling them go and kill another youngster. The home has to do its part. The schools have to do their part. The church has to do its part. The community leaders and community groups have to do their part. And too many of us in our society see criminality, know criminality, and encourage that criminality, either actively or tacitly. Too many of our young girls are hiding contraband, hiding gun, doing the driving, making the phone call, oh, see him over here, come now. And we have to say it because that's the reality. So when all of that is happening in the society, and then you see Superintendent David walking down the road and you say, watch he, crime out of control. The society needs to do its part. And for every one of us who sees something and decides not to say something, that encourages criminality in the country. The police cannot do it alone. You could bring the best police officers, give them the most technology. They cannot do it alone. And the government cannot do it alone. So we really need the buy-in of the community. We need the communities around Nevis and St. Kitts to say, enough is enough. We don't want this in our midst anymore. And when they say that, you'll see how quickly the crime problem disappears. Because the criminals then will know, listen, if I go into Craddock Road and make a mistake there, people are going to call the police, you know. That's what's happening. I was told recently of a joke in Europe. They say that if you park illegally in Switzerland, people call the police right away and tell them somebody's parked illegally. And the police come, and Switzerland's a low crime area. They say if you park illegally in Italy, they call the post and tell them the police coming. And that shows the difference in terms of the society and how the society functions. So I continue to encourage all of our people to play their part, Mr. Ross. You talk about water shortage and the wet fete. I'm told there's one wet fete that is on the calendar for Culture Armor 45. And I will answer you this way. I think that is something we'll have to deal with closer to the time, because we don't know what's going to happen in terms of the water situation. It may well be that this period that we're going through, that it turns around, because clearly we may get substantial rainfall that comes. And so we will be closer to that time able to say whether or not that event will move ahead as planned, or whether there will be some adjustments in the context of saving water. So I don't want to prejudge that at this point, because I think that event is still several months away from today. But I hear the sentiment. I think we had a wet fete here recently, and the young man indicated that he had got water from cisterns that he had used, so there was no government water involved. But nevertheless, I appreciate the concern, and it's something that we will have to look at carefully. Any other questions?
Good morning, Monique Washington, St. Kitts Nevis Observer.
Good morning, Ms. Washington.
But we're going to start with the social media policy. Are the government workers adhering to the changes on the main road? I know there's some talk about doing the main road from Cotton Ground to the airport. Has anyone been, or has the government found a contractor to do that project? And can you please give us an update on the digital price increase? I know you spoke about it some months ago, but is there an additional update available? And when you were addressing Mr. Hanley moments ago, you spoke about being ahead of the game in water. My question is the NIA ahead of the game in electricity when it comes to additional communities or growing communities on the island? Development. Now, it's a all data, but between 2011 and 2015, the Department of Physical Planning data showed that there were about 25 proposed projects to happen on the island, where 2 in St. Paul's, 9 in St. Thomas's, 2 in St. George's, 1 in St. John's, and 11 in St. James. Now, we would have seen Candy, Tamarind Cove, and those projects being started. My question is, what has the government put in place to ensure that investors are held to their end of the bargain when it comes to delivering a completed project? And are there any penalties for investors or developers who come to the island who say that they're going to have this development, begin it and not complete it? And lastly, is there an update on this Candy Resort physical planning and Bass court case? And when will Candy Resort begin again, if you have any information? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. You've asked quite a lot. The social media policy, the short answer is no. Not everybody is adhering. We have some, what I would call, stubborn offenders. But I think that we've asked various department heads and permanent secretaries to deal with that. But generally speaking, I think that it is better than it was before, and I don't see the widespread abuse that we used to have. The main road, you say from Cotton Ground to the airport, we have had various quotations. We have invited some bids. I believe that the bids were a bit more than we could manage, and so we have asked them to look at it again, and I think we've gone from the Cotton Ground now to Cliff Dwellers. That area is particularly troublesome, and the Cotton Ground to Cliff Dwellers area, what we have been able to do there is to get some bids that we think are more acceptable. And so what we are seeking to do, and I think we'll shortly be in a position to make an announcement as to that road. You know, it's a road that has always been given some problems because of the water table there being pretty high, and so we want to get it solved once and for all. And I hope to be able to come back to you, Ms. Washington, in due course, and make an announcement in that regard. But it is something we're looking at, and we do have bids in place from, I think, 3 separate companies on doing that road, and we're evaluating those bids now. Digicel, no increase from Digicel. That has been scrapped, and the application must come to the communications authorities on St. Kitts. That's a note that have been passed, as I indicated we had written, to Digicel, protesting the approach, and I gather they've scrapped the increase. And so that's some relief for people, and again, shows the government at work and being attentive and looking at this matter. Electricity, you're absolutely correct. Just like water, we need to stay ahead of the curve. We have not, in my view, done as well over the years in terms of investment there. In fact, it was only, I think, a year ago that we invested in the Wärtsilä engine. It was the first major investment for a very long time. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think when we look at it, I believe that I understood that there were about 9 engines there, and of those, I believe all were purchased under a CCM administration. And so governments over the years have not always seen electricity as important enough to make the investment. We have the geothermal issue that continues to be an important issue, because if geothermal can be delivered, then all of our problems are solved in terms of supply. But we have continually been in a sort of no man's land, because as we wait for the geothermal producers to produce what they've committed to produce, we obviously need at the same time to supply electricity to our people. And so that is why we would have invested, I believe it was some $5 million in that Wärtsilä engine just a year ago. We have just had an audit done of Nevlec. We brought some experts in. They've done an audit. I can tell you that I'm troubled by what the audit says in terms of what we have there and what we have there, and the risks to the system that they've identified. And we think we're moving quite quickly to try and solve some of the issues that they've identified. So we will continue to do that, but I agree with you. Well, I shouldn't say I agree with you. I respond to your question by saying we have not, in my view, kept pace, and we need to do a better job of that where electricity is concerned. But it is a matter that we are aware of and a matter that we're working on. 2000 to 2015, you're absolutely correct. We've had a lot of projects. You said 25, I don't know the number. But you're absolutely correct that we've had a lot of projects approved. And very few of those projects have come to fruition for a variety of reasons. You mentioned Tamarind Cove and Candy Resort. Those started and stopped. But there are others, such as Amman, and we hear the names, that have all been approved and have not yet come to fruition. What I can tell you is that the approach now is a little different. Many of those projects got open-ended approvals, meaning they were simply approved. We have now instituted a system where they get an approval, which is 18 months. And we say to them that if within 18 months you can't get your project going, you'll have to come back to us. And you'll have to come back and explain to us what the problem is. Because we have no time to waste with people who come and all they have is promises. We want genuine investors who can come and invest and make things happen. And I could call out the names of the various projects. Fisherman Cabanas, which was supposed to be down there by Jessup's. You know, you have Live Nevis. You have all kinds of projects that put up a billboard and say they come in and don't materialize for a variety of reasons. Money being the number one reason why a lot of them don't materialize, because a lot of the so-called developers don't have the resources to actually do the development. So we are now saying that you must come, you must show some source of funding, you must have 18 months. If you can't start your project within 18 months, you must come back, because all the concessions we give you will lapse after 18 months. So the open-ended arrangements that existed in the past, as a matter of policy, we've changed that to try and get serious people to the table and to say to them that if they're not serious, then Nevis is not for them. They must go elsewhere. Candy Resort, from my understanding, that matter, the planning department won the case at the High Court, and Mrs. Bass has decided to appeal to the Court of Appeal. And all indications are that she is going to continue to appeal as long as she can. We have no choice. We live in a nation of laws. We have respect for the rule of law. And the courts are there for anybody who wants to go to the court. Whether they're right or wrong is not a matter for me. It's a matter for the court. And the court ultimately will make its determination, and the government will be guided by that. What I can say to you, Miss Washington, and to the public, is that my information is that because of the years of delay in that resort, that the investors have already gone. I'm told they're in Antigua now, doing something there. Whether they'll be willing to come back and finish after all this, I can't say. But what it does say is that this is one of the impacts of when you have this type of development where one person on the island is basically saying to another investor, you can't do what you want to do. And as a consequence, the whole process gets tied up in the courts, which Mark U.S. says they're right, but nevertheless there are implications. Now that project, if it was opened, I am sure a few people would have been there working. I am sure you'd have had a manager managing that project. I'm sure you'd have had some people taking care of the rooms, some people taking care of the maintenance, some people taking care of the grounds. They had promised things like, I think, a swimming pool and tennis court. I'm sure people would have been living there. That there would have been a turnover, a benefit to the society from having it there. But instead, I passed there recently and the buildings are clearly already showing the wear and tear of the sea blast and all of that. And the people, as I said, the last I heard from them, they said Nevis really isn't ready, and they have gone elsewhere. So sometimes these things happen, and sometimes that's a difficulty, because oftentimes those who are protesting that Mr. A is trying to do a development are themselves busy developing, and they would like to do their development without let or hindrance, but yet they're seeking to hinder others from doing their development, and the island, in my view, at the end of the day, loses the benefit of that investment. These people were going to do 54 condominium units there, with all the attached, amenities, and they were intending to rent and to have it as a sort of condo hotel. So it could have been a pocket of employment right there within that area is Libel Hill, Mr. Jeffers, in the Libel Hill area, and people in Libel Hill could have had a payday there, and that's what the government seeks to do. But regrettably, as I said, the matter has been overtaken by the court proceedings, and it appears to me that it is more a question of stubbornness now than any legal, right or legal propriety. Because if you took the matter to court and you lost, then why not leave the matter and allow the project to continue? But you've now gone to the Court of Appeal with promises to go to the Privy Council, and so we continue to see what the courts will do. There's not more that we can do. We respect the courts, we respect the rule of law, and we respect people's rights to go to the court, and so all we can do now is wait and see what happens. But that is as much as I can give you in terms of update in relation to Candy Resort. Penalties for developers, I think that's a brilliant idea. Brilliant idea. It's something that we would need to look at, because it seems that some developers start, get to a point, take people money, and then they don't finish. And so you end up with eyesores across the landscape. And so the government really now has to pay greater attention to ensuring that perhaps people do developments in phases. So maybe when the next time somebody comes and wants to do a big development, you say, okay, can you do phases? So we see completion as you go, rather than doing, as some have done, a number of buildings which then stand there as abandoned buildings, marring the landscape of the island. So these are things that we would have to look at. I think as we move forward, we now will try to be more careful and we try to be more deliberate in our negotiations with investors. And as we try to revamp NEPA, the Nevis Investment Promotion Agency, we anticipate that that will become the one-stop shop. And so that is where those policies will be carried out. And working hand in hand with planning, we can exercise greater control over what happens. But I think you've raised some excellent points, and they're matters that the government will have to look at as we try to develop the island. Any other questions for me? Okay. The motorcade is started for the Special Olympians, our gold medalists, silver medalists. I want to thank all of you for coming, and for those who are listening who may want to go over to the Cicely Brown, I believe at around 1 o'clock, they'll have a reception there as the government continues to show its great appreciation to our Special Olympians. We look forward to seeing one and all at the Agriculture Open Day, Thursday and Friday this week. It's going to be a massive event at the ETW Park, and we continue to encourage our people to go. I want to thank the members of the press who are here religiously every month. I want to thank you. Thank the permanent secretaries, the heads of department, Mr. Scarborough, who is here with us, certainly the police, who also come, and the ministers and members of cabinet who have come. Some have had to leave to attend to the Special Olympians, but certainly we thank everyone who would have come. That, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of the press conference for the month of March. God willing, I hope to see you in the month of April. Thank you, and God bless you.
NTV, Nevis Television. Stay tuned.